r/AskReddit. What is the dumbest solution to a problem that actually worked? I was working as a paramedic at a music festival when we got called to a kid tripping on acid. The guy had climbed to the top of a portable generator stadium light. So he's 20 feet in the air on a light pole staring into this blazing midnight sun screaming, "I'm a moth, go into the flame." We had several cops, firefighters and myself standing at the base for 30 minutes discussing how to get him down without killing him or us. The entire time a crowd of people on drugs is surrounding us to see how it all plays out. Do we get a ladder truck and try to coax him down? What if he won't go? Do we spray mace up there? What if he falls? All of a sudden this greasy looking janitor walks up, turns off power to the generator, turns on his flashlight, and aims it at the Mothman. Dude looks at the flashlight on the ground, scambles down and follows it to the medical rent like a puppy about to get a snack. I'm embarrassed that none of us thought about that. My folks were in town, and my wife and I wanted to take them to dinner. We head to a nearby mediocre steakhouse at the request of my parents, and it's around 6 p.m. The hostesses tell us there's a minimum 45-minute wait. I get suspicious, as their parking lot had barely any cars, so I peek around into their dining area. There are several open tables that would fit a party of 4. Mildly annoyed, I ask the hostesses why we can't be seated at any of these tables. They reply that they're being held for future reservations. I get on my smartphone, open the Open Table app, make a reservation for 6:15 p.m. for a party of 4, and we are seated immediately. I once owned a Subaru and drove a half hour away to a friend's house. On the way home, the brakes lost all their fluid. When I stepped on the brake pedal, the car just coasted. This was in the middle of a blizzard. Nobody else was on the road, so in my head, it made the most logical sense to drive it home right then and there, rather than wait for a tow truck during a blizzard. I took back roads and stayed in first or second gear, 20 miles per hour at most, and braked to a stop with the emergency brake. It was really easy in retrospect. Dumb, but easy. Back when I was in 6th form at school, we had new sofas in the common room, a room where our year could hang out and relax/work/listen to music on our time off. They had been there only a couple of days before one of the legs snapped off one of the sofas. Now we could have attempted to fix it, or just left it missing a leg, but there were often checks and cleaners moving furniture would have noticed it was broken, and we would have got in trouble for not respecting school property. So we did the only sensible thing, which was break all the legs off the sofa, and then all the sofas in the room, so they were all at the same height. We stashed the legs in the ceiling, and nobody knew a thing. Duct tape occlusion therapy. If you've got a wart or a verruca, stick a piece of duct tape over it and replace the tape every time it falls off for 2 weeks or so. It sounds like it's bullshit, like the Windex from my big fat Greek wedding, and I have no idea how or why it works, but it's cheap, painless, and has worked for me and everyone I've recommended it to, including once on a verruca that I'd had for almost a decade, so it seems unlikely to me that it's just a coincidence. Of course, if you admit it in public you sound like the crazy lady at the end of the street who thinks tinfoil hats will keep the government mind rays out. Drove to a neighboring town 80 miles away with one burned out headlight. Remaining headlight went out while in said town. I had no money, and shops were closed regardless. These were dual beam, so although I had lost both headlights, the high beams worked. I didn't make it out of town with getting honked at and flashed repeatedly by angry passing motorists, and understandably so. What was I to do? I continued down the highway and made it about 15 miles before I'm pulled over by the first officer to see me. I explained the situation. Officer has no suggestions. This was before cell phones. Tells me I can go, but that I won't make it home without getting stopped again. I pull over at the next exit, get a free water, dump it in the dirt, make a thin mud, and smeared it over my lights. Worked like a charm. No more honks or flashes. Passed multiple officers. I'm really late to this, but in my ecology class we learned about how there's a snake problem in Guam. particularly brown tree snakes. The solution? Dropping dead mice laced with Tylenol attached to tiny streamer cardboard parachutes. Tylenol is poisonous to the snakes and the streamers attract their attention. It worked. The snakes ate the mice, and it mitigated the snake problem that was affecting the native bat species. I was tested on this in my final exam. Several months ago I was working in an ICU when a pipe burst in the ceiling and began to leak into my patient's room. The supervisor's solution was move him into the hall. However, that would have killed this particular patient. Thankfully, it had been a rainy weekend, so I propped my umbrella up on the patient and the water ran off harmlessly into the floor. The surgeon had a tiny heart attack when he saw it a bit later, but he got over it, I suppose. This was before high-speed internet. We had to transfer a database between two cities 500 km apart, and we had only one night to do it. People started searching how to compress the files and rent several expensive digital lines, I think ISDN, to spread the copy. Then someone said, why don't we remove the hard drive out of the server and move it there by car? So I drove 500 kilometers during the night to deliver the disk and mount the new database. There was a nursing home in Germany and the patients with dementia kept wandering off. They installed a fake bus stop in front of the nursing home, so when dementia patients got out of the building, they would go sit at the fake bus stop and wait for the non-existent bus. The bus stop was clearly visible from the main offices, so whenever staff saw someone out there, they would just go and retrieve them. Solved the problem completely. We had a problem with an order, so I wrote an email from my email address to customer support asking them on how to proceed. They told me that since the order was done in my girlfriend's name, they couldn't give me this information for privacy reasons. So I just replied, still from my email address, with I hereby allow fragrant vegetable to inquire information about my order. Regards. Insert girlfriend's name here. Apparently that was proof enough for them to give me said information, which actually was just to call a certain number. Why that information fell under their privacy policy in the first place is still a mystery to me. Use the wax from a Babable cheese round to secure the license plate tucked in the back window. It was a rental and we didn't want to scratch anything up by putting the plate on, but the racket was driving me crazy. 2 chunks of wax on the corners and I could sleep on the road trip. I also used it on my screen door in the same way because the weather stripping was worn out and my landlord was a cheap ass. Stop the rattling. My car got pummeled in a terrible hailstorm. Little dents over every surface of the car. My insurance would only write it off as a total loss, and I didn't want to give the car up. A friend pointed out that, since I live in the desert, the heat will likely fix a lot of those dents over time. That's exactly what happened. A year later, you had to look carefully to find dents where there used to be 100 of them. Ignoring the problem fixed it. A few years ago, my parents bought a soundbar from Best Buy around mid-November. 2 weeks later, Black Friday rolls around and the soundbar is on sale. I happened to be visiting, so we roll over to Best Buy, receipt in hand, to see about getting a price adjustment. It's busy, but not terribly so, but the manager flat refuses and says they won't do any price adjustments on Black Friday sales. I can tell my parents are about to blow a fuse, so I pull them away. Instead, we go over to the speaker section, grab the identical soundbar, and take it up front to buy at the lower price. As soon as we're done at checkout, we take the box to the customer service counter and return it with the old, higher price receipt. No questions asked. There was a small but noticeable dent in the side of my car for several years. Some of my friends and I were playing basketball in a parking lot and a hard pass caused it. It was honestly no big deal. Fast forward a few years. I'm chatting in the parking lot with a woman I work with. She spots the dent and says, I can fix that right up. She goes back to her car and gets a plunger. She plunged the dent right out of my car, like it was never there. Getting onto the NJ Turnpike once, there was an attendant at each booth handing out something to each driver. I assumed that meant the machines that issue tickets indicating where you got on were broken. Turns out they were handing out pamphlets advertising Easy Pass, and I had skipped the functioning ticket machine. By turnpike rules, I would have to pay the full fee, as though I had driven the entire length. As I approached my exit, I came up with a stupid plan. Act stupid. When I pulled up to the toll booth window, I said, against every grammatical fiber in my being, "I ain't got no ticket." The attendant rolled her eyes and asked where I had entered. Playing dumb saved me about $5.